Hey everybody, Fishman here. Welcome to another video. Well, it would seem that I'm not the only one who thinks this thing looks rather cool. Because in Wednesday's video, in the comments section, this is by far the favorite for turning into the filter of the three choices I gave you. Which is kind of funny, because first off, this is going to make the worst filter of those three. The other two would have far greater filtering capacity, and I'd be able to, at least the black tray there, make chambers for it. And then the Betty Crocker food container has a fair amount of volume, and I should be able to make, put sponges and gravel and all sorts of stuff in that as well. And both of those I think would actually make, if not pleasing to look at filters, they would actually make functional filters. Whereas this is, I hope, going to look okay, but it's not really going to be a good quality filter. Now, the other thing I want to mention about this is, of course, is it kind of surprised me also because the other two, I think I could have made a filter out of them without having to use any of the equipment I have here. This one, it's not going to be possible. There's just no way I can take a utility knife and do anything with this and make it look at all reasonable. And I put this little clip in here because this is my pet peeve. Why do companies put on these paper stickers that just don't come off properly and you have to fiddle with them and try to... this is so annoying. So I did go over this a few times trying to figure out the best way of obviously putting a hole in this and supporting it and not breaking it. And the only thing I could come up with is this is a diamond hole saw, and I use it for cutting 1-inch holes in glass. And I am going to fast forward through this as I go because I really had to take my time going through the bottom of this. It would more melt than cut, and I had to let it solidify and then go in again and back and forth. I could actually cut through 1/4-inch glass faster with this thing than I am with this 1/8 inch. It's a polycarbonate, I'm pretty sure. I didn't bother testing it with methylene chloride, but I'm pretty sure it is. But it was such a pain. And then afterwards, because the core that I took out was semi-melted, it pretty much fused to the drill bit, and I had to drill that piece of plastic out. I'll show it to you in a little bit as well. And then I went to drill these holes, and unfortunately I forgot to turn the camera on. My apologies. But I do have to drill a couple more, and there's just no way of holding this. It can't be put in a vise. I could have probably have built a template for this, but it really wasn't worth all the extra effort. So what I did instead is I really took my time. This is a sharp bit, and I am just touching off, and actually because the drill bit, even though it's sharp, is more melting through this than cutting, it warmed it up enough that I didn't have to worry about having a split out at the bottom or a push out, whatever you want to call it, any kind of shelling or cracking. So that's kind of nice. And then when I went to drill the 1/4-inch holes, my phone decided to focus on the wrong spot, and all that footage came out blurry. Fortunately, it's just the same as this. It's just obviously a large diameter drill bit. And this is what it looked like after I cleaned it off. But when I was first finished, I remember I mentioned all that melting. The drill bit actually looked like this. This is solid. I can't get this off with my fingers. I had to put this back in the milling machine and run it through a piece of plywood to warm it up so I can pop it off finally. That's what it ended up looking like. This is just ridiculous stuff. I mean, it is very cheap plastic. And while I'm actually on that topic again, one other thing I forgot to mention earlier is when you are dealing with dollar store stuff that is for kitchen stuff, like sponges, cleaning materials of any form, like if you're going to use like sponges or scouring pads, be very careful because a lot of the times that sort of material will have some sort of fungicide or antibacterial agent in it, and that could easily put toxins into your aquarium. So definitely be careful of that and make sure everything's well rinsed and soaked and rinsed again before you decide to use it in an aquarium. And probably might be best just to test it on something small and simple to start off with. So what I'm doing here, because I can't drill this, the angle isn't good enough, and because I could use a simpler tool, like I could use a file or a hacksaw or something along those lines, But because I'm not using dollar store stuff at all here for this build, I decided the best thing to do is to plunge mill this, and it is the easiest way of ensuring that I don't crack this, because I'm a long way into this build now, and for it to have a, one of these chambers crack would just be so annoying. So I'm going to off camera do the rest of those, and then we're going to get to hopefully the assembly of this shortly. But one more thing needs to be done first, and that is the smallest chamber, which is going to be the last of the overflow. It needs to have a way for the water to get back in the aquarium, because I mentioned it was going to be an above tank thing. So I'm going to drill a series of holes in the bottom of this, just going to be 1/4 inch holes, and then I'm going to put a screen over that, and this is how the water is going to get back into the tank. Now I'm not going to build anything fancy for the stand. I'm just going to use 2 slats of 1/4 inch acrylic just going across the top of the tank, and then the pump is going to obviously feed up through the center hole there, and you need to put the fittings on for that as well. But seeing how I was already deeply into using tools for this, that is very thin acrylic, and I need to put some sort of bushing or washer, however you want to look at it, between the threads for the 2 fittings I'm going to use. Now I could easily just cut that with a hacksaw, but because this material again is so prone to melting and cracking, I decided the best thing to do was to use the lathe. Well, there's a core, by the way, I took out of that. I had the one I had to drill multiple times to get enough of space there that I can pry that out. Again, this is very poor material to work with when it comes to, well, the types of material, the tools I'm using. So this is the fitting, and the material's too thin for this, so I put that on, I cut a piece off and put it in the lathe and flattened it out nice and smoothly so that I don't put any uneven pressure on this. Again, just so I don't end up cracking it at this late stage. Because all I need to do now is put this on, and then we're pretty much good to go. This is done. I just have to put some materials inside it, and obviously go through the process of figuring how I'm going to get that pump, the pump that is running that algae filter, well, similar one, of course, not the exact same one, the Javamoss one. You saw the flow through that. There's just no way that the system's going to hold that flow. So what I'm going to do initially, and you'll see as we progress here, is I'm going to, each pump of these pumps have a dial, so you can dial it down really, really far and have very little water flowing through it. So I'm going to go through that process here in a few minutes. But first, it's going to put a bunch of gravel in each of these chambers, try to make this thing look at least reasonably nice. And because I'm figuring that the pump is not going to be cut down sufficiently by just turning down that the restrictor, I am going to fill this chamber up with gravel, and I'm going to put a piece of screen there, and hopefully this will further dampen the pump's ability to pump water through this. So this is my plan so far. It'll end up looking nice, but again, this is not something that is going to be designed for long-term use, not with the equipment I have anyway. But it has given me some ideas for a possible future build. One of these actually built the right size with the right kind of chambers, the right kind of stuff like that, that will be able to handle a bit more flow. And of course, that way I'll be able to drill all the holes prior to assembly, and that would make it much more simple, of course. We'll have to see about that in the future. So this is the pump turned down to the last notch. Like, there's just one little notch. Next notch up is off, and you can see this is pumping just way too much water. So my first attempt at getting this to work properly is to actually turn that knob all the way over, so there's literally no gap anymore. All that is going through this pump at this point when I turn this on is the water that's going by everything. Like, there's just a few gaps there. You can see it's a little bit less now, but this is going to create an awful lot of backup pressure in that pump. So what I need to do now is form another way of restricting it. So what I've done now is I put more gravel in, and what I did is I took the pipe that's going in at the bottom that you can see there, and I have stuffed that with sponges, So it's creating even more of a back pressure on this, and you can see it's gradually filling up now, and they're starting to go out. That's what I had to do to get that pump to be slow enough for this to function. This probably would have been a better build with airflow, but again, it's like this is just a simple build, and I didn't want to get too far into this. I mean, this is not something that I'm going to run on an aquarium. It's just something to try out, and I'm not even sure that this plastic is safe for my fish, so I probably won't even run this for very long. So what I've done now is I put a little bit of Java Moss in here, trying to make this look a little bit more presentable. It is okay. I think I could make a really interesting one of these. Let me know in the comment section below if that sort of thing interests you. I think I can make something that would be a much nicer looking cascade. But as it turns out, it's not so bad for something I got out of a dollar store. Let me know what you think about that as well. So there you go. This is running. The Java Moss is really good at allowing the water to wick over each of those levels, so I don't get any dripping on the outside. But one of the other things I noticed, and you might see it in the pan out for this, I'm not sure if that's already come up or gone by, this thing leaks. You can see water around the edge there, and it's dripping down all the sides. I'm not sure how it's leaking, but it doesn't hold water, so interesting. There you go. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm going to get around to the other two more practical builds for this coming up. And thank you very much for watching. I will see you in the next video, and bye for now.